Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on my video today. I got a bit of a welding accessory that I think everybody should have. Maybe not everybody, but I think that if you're new to welding, you're learning, you're doing a lot of practice, and you do a lot of small projects, whatever it might be, this is a really helpful thing to have. But before I show you what it is, I got to tell you a story as to how I learned that this was a thing. Now, when I was in high school, I took a welding class, as many teenagers do when they're in high school. In this welding class, they taught you how to use an oxyacetylene torch. They taught you to cut with it, and then they also taught you to weld with it, do melt strips, and then they also introduced a filler material with the oxyacetylene torch. They taught you how to stick weld, and then they taught you how to do a MIG weld, and that was like the 101 class. You know, there was multiple classes, but this was the basic class. Now in the class, there was like welding booths. And the booths were fairly tight. I mean, they were maybe 4 foot by 4 foot or so, and they had the plastic hanging at the back of them, so anybody walking behind you didn't get sprayed by sparks or look at the arc and get blinded or anything like that. Now, the way that this booth was set up, there was like an 8 or so inch square piece of plate on a clamp around a post, and the post. Now, the clamp, you could loosen it up and slide it up and down the post so that the plate was at your desired height. So this booth was set up for the MIG welder and the stick welder. I think at the time they were the same machine. They may have been different machines. Now in this class, your practice plate was 3/8, and you used it to cut. You would cut. Part of the class was cutting a 4 inch by 4 inch piece of material, and then you got graded on that as far as how your cuts looked, was it square, all that kind of stuff. And then once that was done, you were given your piece of plate back, and you had to stick weld on the top of it in each direction. Not each direction, but you know, run your bead this way, and then you had to run your bead this way, and then you had to run your bead this way, you know, back and forth down the whole piece of plate. And then you did the same thing with the MIG gun. You had to do the same thing, this way, this way, this way, this way, and back and forth. Now, in this class, I never set the machine up. As far as, you know, I never messed with any of the dials on the machine. The clamp was at the top of the post that the plate was on, so the plate was always grounded. So all you did was just set your piece of material on it, go to town. So I don't know if it was me being a teenager and not paying attention in class, or if they didn't cover it, or what the deal was, but I didn't know what this thing was. So when I got out of that class and I went, you know, after high school, I went down and I bought my own welder because I had some projects that I wanted to do, and I was sick of trying to get other people to do them for me that already owned welders. I didn't know what this grounding clamp did. Like, I knew what it did. I knew what grounding it meant. But because in my class, I had never used one of these things. It was just clamped on the post at the top. You know, I had seen it, but I didn't understand it. And the reason I didn't understand it is because I didn't understand electricity. Now, had I understood electricity to begin with, this combination between the clamp and the gun would have made more sense to begin with. But because I didn't understand this, I made a kind of a big mistake to begin with. So what I did was I went down to Lowe's because, you know, I knew so much about welding, and I purchased a Lincoln Electric. It was a Weld Pack HD. And it was the absolute cheapest machine on the shelf, and that's the only reason that I bought it. I took it home, and I was going to build a dirt bike stand. You have to use your imagination here a little bit and imagine these 2 nails are some like 9/16 round bar. Now I was going to make this exact piece, just a triangle. Okay. Now what I did was I had my triangle over here, and I took this piece of material and I set it over here because my thinking was, well, the clamp just has to be on a piece of metal, right? That's good enough. That's all I need. Anybody that knows anything about welding knows that's not what you need. This clamp has to be touching the parent materials. Now, like I said earlier, if I knew more about electricity, I would have known that this setup with this clamp on this material, trying to weld these two pieces of material, I would have known that that wasn't going to work. So somebody seen me trying to build this, told me why it wasn't going to work, and it was because there was no circuit being completed. Now that's what happens between your grounding clamp and your MIG gun. A circuit is being completed in this piece of material, and that's what creates an arc. Now I didn't know that when I was trying to build this thing. Somebody tells me that's how it works. They also gave me a huge piece of advice for a particular accessory that really makes little projects like that, or just practicing in general, so much easier. And that was this. A steel practice table. Now, this table is, as far as materials go on this table, it is a 1/4 inch top, 3/16 legs, about 2.5 inches tall, and that's it. Simple, easy, but super useful. Now, the reason for this is because when you're practicing, if you're anything like me, I practice with really small, but not really small, but fairly small pieces of material. Now, it's hard to get this clamp on these tiny little pieces of material and then get your gun in here at the same time and do all your welding. So you build this table. Now, when you have this table, you just take your clamp, put it on the table leg, like that, and you're good to go. Now this whole table is grounded, just like that booth in high school was. Now I can take my 2 pieces of practice material or whatever, set them on here, get it all lined up for a lap weld, go to town. And I don't have to worry about my clamp touching these because the circuit is being completed through the table and the material. Now for me, this table was an invaluable piece of advice because when I first started welding, all of my projects were little tiny nothing projects, right? Like most people are. And then also at the same time, it's a fantastic accessory for practicing. Now I've had the skill of welding for about 15 years now ish, and I still practice. I did this like 3-4 weeks ago because this is one of those skills, you use it or you lose it kind of a thing. And like if you are a welder, or if you can weld and you don't do it for a couple of years and then you try to come back and do it, it's not going to look, you're going to go like, holy crap, I thought I know how to do this. But because you didn't do it for a while, use it or lose it kind of a thing. One important thing to do with this table is you have to keep the table clean. Now you can see down here is nice and shiny, up here is dingy and brown. This dingy brownness is, there's some welding berries and stuff like that. This is going to hinder your connection between your ground clamp and your gun. Now, all you gotta do is break out a flap wheel, clean the junk off of it, and you're good to go again. But you also need to keep the spot where you put your ground clamp, you need to keep that clean as well. You can see over here is all scaled, right here's nice and shiny clean. The inside is nice and shiny clean as well. Now that is all for the purpose of connection. It's all for the purpose of making sure your welds are as good as they can be. Because if you have a bad connection, 1, your welds are going to look like junk, and 2, you're not going to get any fusion into them, and then stuff breaks, and that's bad. So this is, for me, a very valuable accessory for your welder, because unless you're welding every day, you're making money at it, you're doing those things, you're not going to do it that often if you're just only doing it when you have a project for it. So when you build this will make you practice more often because it will be cheaper to do it. Because if you're using just little pieces of material like this and it's not costing you much to do this, to practice, you're going to practice more often. Now you could do like I used to do, go down, get yourself some square tubing, and then you just fill this gap. That's all you do. That's your practice, is just filling in that gap between the 2 pieces of tubing. Or something I never did, but you could do, is go down and get a piece of 3/16 or 1/4 inch thick flat bar, about however, I'm sure you could probably do like a 1 inch, cut it in half, and then stack the 2 pieces, and then just practice a lap weld that way. Practice a butt weld with them, whatever you want to do, and that would work. But it, to me, makes more sense to build this little table, get this piece of flat bar, cut it up, and get a piece of 3-inch flat bar, cut it up into 2-inch chunks, and then just start welding them together. To me, that makes the most sense. It might make less sense to you. It might make more sense just to cut this thing in half and stack it and go that route. But this is my favorite way to do it. So there you have it. One of my favorite welding accessories is a stupid little steel table that makes life so much easier when you're trying to practice or when you're building something small. It's great. So I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all learned something. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you're here for the first time, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you all in the next one.